G'day guys, welcome to Super Little Challenges. My guest this week is Naden. Liam shares his knowledge of the brain in a very simple and tangible way, including its four main parts and how we can use it better in our daily lives. Enjoy this one guys, let's go. I'm interested in how you've arrived at where you are today and what's perhaps one of the main personal challenges you had to overcome along the way.
Well, probably like you and most of your listeners, I've been a person up for a challenge for most of my life. In fact, even from a young age, I can remember I was always driven by this idea, how can I be better? How can I get more out of life? How can I be successful? All those sorts of things. And that really drove me for many years to study lots of different things and also to set up my own businesses. But I was always very driven to be more and more successful. And I studied lots of personal development on everything from goal setting, motivation, changing your beliefs, changing your subconscious mind, using your thoughts, the right way and all those sorts of things. And I also did lots of spiritual things and philosophy, religion. I studied all of these, anything basically I could get my hands on that I thought, maybe this is the answer. Maybe this is how I can really be the best that I can be. It's by learning this particular method or idea or strategy. Maybe it will help me. One thing I noticed was probably with the help of a lot of these ideas, I was achieving a lot of success in my life, certainly outward success. I was doing really well in my businesses and I was making lots of money and I was building up my net worth, as it were. But on the downside, I found that I always had lots of problems and stress. To quote the title of your show a little bit, or to paraphrase, life was always a challenge. And I started to believe this idea that I'd read in many places as well, actually, that struggle is the price you pay for success. Problems are what you get. Challenges are what you get when you strive to be more, when you strive to be better, and when you achieve more. So that was all well and good. I thought, well, I'll just have to learn to live with stress, learn to live with problems, learn to live with uncertainty and all of those sorts of things. But on the other hand, I wasn't really comfortable with it because it's like, well, when can I get over this? When can I start really feeling comfortable about my life and in control? And feel that things are really going well. So anyway, I had all this knowledge. I'd done all these different things. I was doing pretty well or very well on the outside. I had multiple homes, multiple businesses. And then in my mid-40s, something happened that should never have happened, me being a bit of an expert on success or a student of success, if you like. And that was I lost everything and I became homeless. And I literally had to move back in and sleep on the couch in the living room of my elderly mother's small apartment. So here I was in my mid-40s, having lost everything and thinking, I know everything about goal setting, about how to achieve, about getting what you want, about doing all the right things and the right ways of thinking. This should never have happened to me. For the first time or the greatest time in my life, I actually felt really out of control. I felt I had no power over what was going on, what was happening to me. So it was an interesting experience and it really got me thinking. And what got me thinking more was when I got through that whole experience and sort of came out the other side, I started to rebuild my life and I started to find new business opportunities, set up new businesses, start to make money again, start to do really well again. I didn't have quote unquote problems. I had things I had to deal with. But I wasn't waking up in the morning dreading opening my email inbox. I wasn't going to bed at night stressed about all the problems that I had. I didn't have all of these unexpected problems that kept showing up in my life. And for the first time, I could thought, well, I actually feel really happy. And then another big difference was, whereas before, it was like I was chasing after success. I was always setting bigger goals, trying to learn more, trying to find out better ways to do things, trying to push to get more. But now, after that experience, it was like success was coming to me. And it came in the form of ideas. I'd suddenly get an idea and go, hey, that's a really good idea. I should do that. And I'd do it and it worked. Or it might have been, and often was, a person, unexpected person or an unexpected situation would show up. And this happened to me. People I hadn't seen in years sometimes would show up in my life and say, hey, here's an idea, an opportunity, or can you do that? And everything seemed to fit together and work in a much better way. And there's a word for it, of course, which is being in the flow. Things were flowing a lot better. And I said to myself a while after all this was happening, because it felt like it was happening to me, not me doing, not me pushing, Even though I was playing my part, I was working hard. But I thought, I need to figure out what the difference is here, because I'm doing something very differently. I don't know what it is, but I want to know, because I don't want to stop doing it. I want to make sure this carries on, because this is really working. This is great. I actually feel excited about my life. And what that led me to was really, because remember, I had all this knowledge about all these different techniques and strategies and ideas and books and approaches, if you like, to success. And I thought, there's something I'm really missing here. And what is it? What is the missing link that none of these things have been able to provide me with? And one of the things I noticed was I was spending more time in nature, and it occurred to me, when I started to look at nature, I thought, what is nature? What is this biological world that we live in? I'd never really looked at it before. And I think very few people do look closely at what nature is, because it's absolutely incredible. And I started to think about our natural world, and I realized, of course, we are biological. And if you ask the question, who are you? What are you? Of course, you're going to get millions of different answers, probably, because there's been all sorts of books that have been written about who we are. We're spiritual, we're this, we're that. But one thing we can all agree on is that we are, on one level, biological. We live in a biological body. We're physical, and we live in a physical world. And that, of course, might not be all who we are, but we live in a physical world as physical beings. So I thought, well, I don't know who I am or what my purpose is overall, but maybe there's a way I'm wired biologically. Maybe there's a biological purpose for my body, for my life. And of course, biological science has an answer to that very question. The purpose of all life, including your own, is to survive. In other words, it's to be the best that it can be, so that it has the greatest chance of survival, so that it carries on the life of the species, as it were, through reproduction and carrying on in that way. So we have that biological purpose as well, actually, because all living things are wired, designed to strive to be the best that they can be, to give it the greatest chance of survival. And of course, for humans, we are the same, but being the best that we can be doesn't just mean physically. We're not, all biological life is trying to survive physically by being its best, because when it's at its best, it's strongest, healthiest, able to resist disease, able to fight off dangers, all those sorts of things. But of course, for humans, when we're at our best, when we've got our greatest chance for survival, it also means when we're at our happiest, when we're mentally, emotionally, and spiritually at our best. That actually contributes to our survival, because it makes us more resourceful, more creative, more able to do the right things and live a better life and be happier, and therefore live longer and carry out our biological purpose, which is to survive. So I thought, okay, so what that really means is on a biological level, your purpose is to be successful. Your purpose is to be happy. Your purpose is to be the best that you can be, because that is the purpose of all biological life. So what has nature provided in the way of a mechanism, a system, some machinery or whatever it is, to ensure that every living thing can strive and can achieve its purpose, which is to be the best that it can be. And in all of nature, nature has provided one single mechanism to do that, and that is the brain. Every living thing possesses a brain, and the brain has only one function, and that is to ensure that that organism is the best that it can be, so it has the greatest chance for survival. That's the only purpose of a brain, to keep you alive, you and every living thing alive, and striving to be the best it can be. So I thought, well, this is really interesting. So I've got a brain. Every living thing has a brain. Its sole purpose is to make me the best that I can be. And it's such an enormously powerful machine. It's not only designed to do that, it's capable of doing that. It is capable of making everybody and everything the best that it can be. So why aren't we the best that we can be? Because if you look in nature and science, again, I was reading something interesting about this recently, that some researchers had come to the conclusion that biological life is 98% successful. In other words, if you look in nature, everything is being the best that it can be. You look at a bird or birds, they are living their purpose. They fly when they need to, they eat when they need to, whatever they do, they're being perfect. A plant, a tree, an insect, whatever it is being the best that it can be 98% of the time. But humans, this study went on to conclude, we're 98% unsuccessful because 98% of people are not living being the best that they can be. They're not happy. They're not really in the zone. They're not being the most creative, productive, and the best that they can be. So what's the difference? Why is it that we're this odd species out? We're 98% unsuccessful, whereas nature is designed to make a success rate of 98%, not a failure rate. And it can only be one thing, and that can be using this machine, the brain, the wrong way. Because any machine, and the brain is a machine, it has a task that it's designed to achieve, which is to get you being the best that you can be, as I said, so that you have the greatest chance for survival. But if you think about any machine, think about a motor car, that has a very specific purpose. It's designed to get you from where you are to where you want to go. And that's its purpose, and it's going to do it efficiently, effectively, guaranteed, if you like, and very comfortably for you, the passenger. You know that it's going to do that, and you don't doubt that it's going to do that. And there's only one reason why it wouldn't do the job it's designed to do, and that is it's not being used the right way. And it turns out on a biological level, problems, and I know this sounds controversial, but it's the only logical conclusion you can come to, problems are a sign, problems aren't natural. Problems are not part of your biological purpose. You are not designed, because they don't help you achieve your biological purpose. They make you stressed, they weaken you, they damage you. So they're not part of, all they are a sign that you're not using the machine that was designed to create this life where you're living the best that you can be. You're not using it in the right way. And that's all that happens. So when you learn how to use it the right way, it's amazing what happens to your problems. It's amazing what happens to your life. But science actually explains this. There is an explanation of how your brain works as a machine to create this ideal life, to ensure you don't have problems, but we've never been taught how to use it the right way. We've never understood it. And that's really the fundamental problem. And that's what I'm helping people with, or attempting to help people with, is to understand this machine and see how your life changes as a result.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to take from that.
That's the short version.
This notion of the reset, and the reset that you had in your life really resonates in a way. I experienced a similar thing, but it's kind of like only when you have nothing do you then have everything. You touched on a need for control, and there's a heck of a lot we can't, but I think as humans, we want to at least know that we are in control of certain things. From your knowledge of the brain, you essentially have divided it into 4 parts. The nature thing, yeah, it's astounding that 98% of nature is successful, and predominantly as humans, we're not. Is that because animals are acting more from a primal instinctual level without the influence of intellect, and as humans, because we have this machine and this hard drive, and as you say, we're not using it correctly, or we're not using it to its best, is it intellect that makes the difference between us and animals, and the fact that we're not driving the car, as you say, efficiently?
Well, our intellect, and this is part of the misconceptions about, and it all comes down to an understanding of who we actually are. Because we are in control of our life, but just not in the way that we think we are. And in fact, to be in control of your life actually means to give up the way you think you control your life. So you mentioned the intellect. The intellect is one of the 4 parts of the brain, but it's the part that gives us, that it should, when it's used the right way, does allow us to live our biological purpose and be the best that we can be. But most of the time we mess it up. And we mess it up because we've been told all of these different things about how to use it, which aren't true on a biological level. It's just not how your brain works. And so this is how we create problems in our life. And this is why we have as much potential, if not more potential, well, certainly as much as the rest of nature, to be the best that we can be. But we also, because of our intellect, have the potential to mess it up. I think we try to make it too difficult for ourselves as well. And again, that comes from a lack of understanding. So maybe if I share you have my model for the brain, a lot of things will get a bit clearer.
Please do.
Okay. So essentially, the brain, I mean, it's, obviously an infinitely complex machine, but on another level, as I said earlier, it actually is quite simple in the way it operates. And so what I've taken is I've taken all the scientific information and research that I could find and really joined the dots together and turned it into a simple explanation, a simple model for how the brain works. So I use simple language, but it's all backed up by, if you want to know the technical names or the technical places. In other words, this is based on science. It's not just ideas about the mind or the subconscious or anything like that. This is actually based on biological science as to how you operate biologically, okay? So essentially, there are 4 parts to the brain. And the first part is what I call the thinking brain. You mentioned it before, the intellect. And the purpose of the thinking brain is to take all of the information that we get that comes to us from our environment in every moment of our life through our 5 senses. So whatever we see, smell, taste, touch, hear, or whatever ideas we get, this comes in and is stored in our thinking brain. So it's like a big database or a library of all of our knowledge, all of the information we've gathered in our life in every moment, right up until this moment. It all gets stored in this part of the brain called the thinking brain. Now, the second part of the brain is the emotional brain or the feeling brain. And whereas the thinking brain occupies the top part of our head physically, the emotional brain is just underneath. There's a couple of places where this function operates from. And the emotional brain is, as the name says, this is what manages and creates our emotions, how we feel. So whether we feel great, good, loving, happy, excited, all those things, or whether we feel stressed, worried, afraid, this is all managed and created by the emotional brain. Really important. They're all important, obviously. And the third part of the brain is the survival brain. The survival brain is what manages everything to do with our moment by moment survival. So obviously keeping us alive, basically. So it's all of the bodily functions that we have that happen automatically without us thinking about it. Our breathing, our heart rate, our digestion, whatever bodily function it is. This is all managed moment by moment by our survival brain to ensure that we survive. And there's another function that's managed by our survival brain that is part of our moment by moment survival. And what that is, it's a mechanism or a reflex to deal with the odd situation where you might be presented with something that is an immediate threat to you physically. So either something that could harm you or even kill you, a threat to your survival. So this is managed by your survival brain. And what actually happens, of course, is, and sometimes we call this reflex the fight, flight, freeze response. So we all know what it is. So there's the story in prehistoric times, the tribesman's going through the forest and a lion jumps out from behind a rock. Now, what happens then is the responsibility of the survival brain, because that's a threat to your survival. So what it actually does is it triggers a response actually through your emotional brain, your feeling brain, that creates a sense of fear. And when you feel this fear, that's a signal from this part of your brain that you're facing an immediate threat or danger. This activates the fight, flight, freeze mechanism, also known as your sympathetic nervous system. This is activated, and all of the resources of your brain and your body are directed to reacting to and eliminating this danger, this threat. So if it's a lion, you're going to run away or stand and fight, or maybe you might shout out for help. But whatever it is, it's a response from your survival brain to get rid of that danger, get rid of that threat immediately. And what happens in your brain is all of the, as I mentioned earlier, all of the resources, anything that's not necessary to dealing with that, eliminating that immediate danger, is shut down, and the energy diverted to this function. So that's really important. It's a vital function, but it's one thing that nearly everybody misuses because we don't understand how we're using our brain the wrong way. So what that comes on to, excuse me, is the fourth part of the brain, and science has only more recently started to acknowledge this exists and find it exists within a physical part of our brain. And this is what I call the creative brain. And the creative brain, it's not your thinking brain, it's not even your feeling brain, it's the part of your brain that actually is there to manage your life, to make you the best that you can be. So that you have the greatest chance of survival and live your biological purpose. So in your creative brain, this is where all of the things that make you the best that you can be come from. So your creativity, your imagination, your resourceful, your new ideas, when you get those aha moments, your gut feelings about what is the right decision in any circumstance. Often we shut that down and we deny it. But you get that gut feeling, that doesn't feel right. I shouldn't do that. Or yes, that does feel right. I'm going to do it. It's also where your motivation comes from. So it's where you're productive. The imagination thing, remember, this is not to do with your thinking brain, because many people have acknowledged and talked about this part of the brain. For instance, musicians or composers, they talk about, I just heard the music and then I wrote it down. I don't know where it came from. It's like, where did it come from? But it just came to me. This happens all the time. Now, the other thing about the creative brain, so it's doing all this good stuff to make you feel great and be the best that you can be. Be your happiest, healthiest, strongest, doing all the right things, making all the right decisions, being resourceful, and expressing the greatness of you, basically, the unique greatness of you. Now, of course, the other thing about the brain, about this creative brain, is that on a lower level of awareness, because the creative brain also expands your awareness. So you see the truth, you see the reality of who you are and what your life's all about, which is what you're supposed to do. But if you don't realize that, if you don't see it from that point of view, you see things like the events and you call them luck, coincidence, synchronicity, and you say, well, how did that happen? And you think it's all by chance. But your brain is so powerful, it not only manages your internal state, it manages your environment for you as well. So it literally does bring you the right people, the right circumstances. It makes you make the right decisions and see opportunities, which is so critical, that you wouldn't see otherwise. So this is all you create, and this is the way you're supposed to live. As I said, in this state, it's been described as being in the flow, being in the zone. Religion sometimes calls it enlightenment. But it's all about and we've all had these experiences, we feel great, things are working, things are falling into place. We're being really productive, we're coming up with good ideas, we're making good decisions. That's actually the way we're supposed to live, because that's when we're being the best that we can be. You go back to being the best that you can be, living in your creative state, feeling great. That's what it's there to do. And of course, when you're in survival state, I call it, when you're in this reactive state, getting rid of this danger, you're feeling the fear and you're reacting to the threat. Not only do you not have, you're not supposed to be creative and you don't have all that part of your brain operating, but you can only see the negative because your brain is focused on the danger. What is the danger? What is the threat? Whatever it is, this part of your brain shuts down everything else. It's perfect for what it's designed for, which is to get rid of an immediate danger, because you need to do it like that. But what happens when you're in a stressed state and you're trying to solve a problem, or you're trying to figure out what to do with your life, or you're trying to make the right decision about something, or you're trying to create the right business, the right environment, set the right goals? Guess what? All of the resources for that are shut down. They're blocked out. You can't do it. They're just not there. That's not what they're designed for. This state of feeling fear and anxiety is not designed to be where you live your life from, to solve any of your problems. It can't do it. It's only designed to get rid of an immediate threat to your survival. Now, this was perfect 20 million years ago, whenever it was, when there was a lion behind every rock, but there isn't anymore. And what's happening? What's the problem? We can see it. People, their brain, because they're using it the wrong way, they've got imaginary lions throughout their day, throughout their life. and they wonder why they're stuck and why they're not figuring out, and they're not feeling fulfilled, and they're not being the best they can be. They're not using the part of their brain that's actually there to do that. So the big takeaway is your enemy is fear. Your enemy is anything that makes you feel bad. Because if something makes you feel bad, your brain is saying, this is a threat, this is a danger, go into survival state and shut down any ability you have to actually create your ideal life. That's it. When you realize that, you make fear the enemy and say, I'm going to have to minimize what I put into my head that makes me feel bad. That's it. And it doesn't matter how justified you feel, or you have to stay informed, or you have to stay aware, or you've got all these people in your life who you have to deal with, or you have all these situations that you have to deal with. I mean, I know it's all difficult to accept, but at the end of the day, it's a bit like if someone gave you a glass of hydrochloric acid and said, put that in your car because it's the latest new fuel and it'll make it go well. You hang on a second. You don't understand how a car works. You don't understand how the machine works. That's going to damage it. It's going to wreck it. It's not going to get the car doing its job. And if people say to you, oh, but everyone else is looking at putting it in their car, and if you believe enough, or if you're really motivated enough, or if you have positive thinking enough, it'll work fine. You'd still say, it doesn't matter what the justification, even if my grandmother came along and said, please put it in your car, you'd just say, look, sorry, Granny, I'm not doing this, because you don't understand. I understand how it works, and that machine is not going to function properly if I don't put the right fuel in. It's the same with your brain. If you put the wrong fuel in and activate fear, you're not going to get the right result. That's it. And I learned that the hard way when I lost everything. I'd realized my entire life I'd been putting the wrong fuel in. I've been getting some good results, but I had lots of stress and problems and things that didn't go right. Then my creative brain, could actually start doing its job and figure out my life for me. That's how you really control your life. You control the input of fear and allow your brain machine to do its job. That's being in control.
It's beautiful what you're saying about the emphasis on the creative aspect. That's going to provide the way, really. If the creative part is allowed the freedom to operate without every other resource being consumed because you're in a state of survival or perpetuating fear. And I was just thinking, it's often, it's like, oh, that person's so creative and that person's more analytical. But I guess what you're saying is we're essentially all creative beings.
Well, the thing is, we've got this stuff inside us called DNA. I'm sure everyone's heard of DNA, but do we really know what it is? It's incredible stuff. In every one of our cells, it's like a strand of molecules. And if you were to stretch it out, the strand within one cell in your body, it's, I don't know which metric you want to use, but it's 4 feet long or 1.2 meters long. That's in one cell. You multiply that by 75 trillion cells, which is how many you've got, you're looking at a distance which is 5 times to Mars and back. That's how much DNA you've got in your body. And what is DNA? All DNA is, it's a collection of more than 250 million pieces of information about you. It's a biological blueprint. And what actually is happening on a biological level is your brain is designed to make the best of that biological blueprint. So whoever you are, and everybody's, no two people have got the same 250 million pieces of information about them. We're all unique. But your brain is a machine to bring out the best in you, bring out the best to make the best of these 250 million pieces of information, which is you. So you don't need to say, and this is a function of being in a fear state, using your brain the wrong way, when you start comparing yourself to other people and saying, oh, they're creative, but I'm not, or they're more successful, but I'm not. You're unique. Your DNA is unique. And your brain is saying, please, can you get out of the way and allow me to make the best of who you are? And that's ultimately the only way you can be really happy, successful, and all the things you really want, is to be who you are and allow your brain to bring out the best version of who you are. So again, this is all biology. It's not some fancy spiritual idea of, things that might exist in another plane or another dimension. I mean, I'm not downplaying any of that, obviously, because this all feeds into it. But on a purely physical level, it's a bit like I keep coming back to any other machine, like a car or a computer. It functions They function in a very predictable way. And when you learn how to use it, it does the job it's designed to do. We don't realize our brain is designed to make us the best that we can be, that our purpose is the best we can be. And that's why we carry on struggling and thinking struggle is a normal part of life. It's not a part of life anywhere else in the world. It's only in humans. I mean, there's life, death, there's decay and growth, but that's all part of life. It's not a struggle. We just make it hard for ourselves. Once you start using your creative brain, you not only see what to do to solve your problems, you also see what to do to stop creating more problems for yourself, which is what I used to do all the time. And you also get a different perspective on what problems actually are in your life. Because what is a problem? A problem is something that makes you feel bad. And whatever you think is the problem to someone else, I can guarantee there'll be someone else in the world with the same quote unquote problem who doesn't feel bad about it. So to them, it's not a problem. So therefore, everything is about your perspective. And when you live in your creative state, your perspective changes, and you see that really, if you do have any problems, well, you can deal with them. But most of the time, you don't really have any problems. It's all in your head. You're worried about what you think might happen or what has happened. It's not real.
With these little challenges I've been doing, one of the very, very consistent themes has been awareness, bringing an awareness to something. So would you say one of the keys to keeping fear essentially at bay so that you can allow that other part of your brain to flourish, if that's the right word, or to come through,
to actually work,
to just function in the way it should, in the natural way it should. How important is awareness in all of that?
It's all awareness, isn't it? It's all understanding. It's a bit like, again, with a car. If you don't know how it works, imagine someone comes out from a tribesman who's never seen it from the bush, from some Amazonian tribe or whatever. Not trying to hope I don't upset anybody by saying this, but imagine they've never seen a car before, and they say, "What's that?" And someone says, "It's a motor car." What does that do? Oh, it can get you to 100 miles down the road with no, to wherever you want to go in about an hour. They go, "Wow, okay." And the person goes away, and the tribesman looks and goes, "I wonder how this works." I know. I see that it's got wheels. I'll get behind it and I'll push this because that's obviously how it works. And they push and struggle and they go, and it doesn't go anywhere. And what happens? They just get worn out and they think, "Oh, it's not working right. I know the problem. I'm not strong enough. I'm not motivated enough. I'm not putting in enough effort." And they put in even more effort and struggle. And then the man who owns the car comes around and says, "What are you doing? You're not supposed to struggle. It's not supposed to be hard work. You just need to use it the right way." So and he says, "Oh, well, but isn't it good to struggle?" Why is it good to struggle? Why would you want to struggle when life is about being an exciting adventure, not a struggle? If you think you need to struggle, it's because you feel some fear deep down that there's a benefit to you in struggling, but there isn't. It's far better to I don't know about you, I'd rather write 20 books that are brilliant rather than struggle to write one or whatever it is, And so we've got this misconception which is all based on fear, and we try and justify struggle from a fear state. But in that state, we have such a limited awareness of who we are and what life's really about. Some people say, "Oh, but fear is a great motivator." But if you really analyze that and you really think about it, you don't get motivated by fear, because what happens in a fear state is the opposite. Remember, it's fight, flight, or freeze. Fear makes you depressed, or it makes you not do things. That's when people do nothing, is when they're afraid. But fear is Fear is not the motivator. It's when you overcome the fear. That's when you get motivated. That's when you take the action. That's when you do the fire walk and you say, like I've done. I don't know if you've done any fire walks, but you look at it and you're terrified and you say, "Oh, what the heck, I'm going to do it." So you don't do it because you're afraid. You do it because you say, "I'm not going to be afraid. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get over the fear." So it's a subtle point, but it's one of these beliefs or ideas that we've been fed that, all of these things must be true, but they're not true. If you really analyze them, you realize they're not true.
And the dangers around us are in different forms these days in terms of the media and technology and the images that we can build fear on.
But they are all perceived dangers. And that's where I mentioned earlier about when you realize it's like the hydrochloric acid, you have to start, and this is what I actually teach in my coaching program. I can just throw in a mention of that, is one of the steps is you have to start identifying what it is that's making you feel bad. Because most of the time we're not aware of it. It's big decisions and small decisions. We can all turn off the TV that doesn't make it when we're watching something that doesn't make us feel good. We can all stop that conversation with somebody when it doesn't make us feel good. We can all end that relationship with somebody who really doesn't make us feel good, whether it's a marriage or a business relationship or an employee or a job we have. And people would say, well, they're difficult decisions to make, not when you understand what's at stake. They're not difficult decisions. If you understood, your life depends on this. Your life depends on getting rid of all these things that make you feel bad. It's only then that you can be the best that you can be, that your brain, this machine designed to make you the best that you can operate properly. And with that, obviously, comes an element of trust. But trust is only understanding. It's like a car. You don't trust your car to work. You know it works because you understand that it's what it does. So the beauty is when you start understanding how your brain works, you don't need to trust it. You just know.
You touched on choice and having the kind of best clarity to make good choices at any given time. Also, gut instinct. So are you essentially saying that gut instinct comes from the brain as well?
Absolutely. This is a function of your creative brain, because what is gut instinct? It's a knowing about something. It's not something you've worked out with your thinking brain, tried to figure out and come up, write down the 20 reasons why it's a good idea and the 20 reasons why it's a bad idea and evaluate it or whatever it is. You're not doing that. You just have this knowingness that's come from a different place. And that is your infinite intelligence guiding you to be the best that you can be, because it doesn't guide you just through your intellect. Your thinking brain has a function to play, has a role to play. It can provide you with some information that can help you, and it will help you find or be guided, and you'll be guided to the right places to get more of the right information that will help you. But your life is not based on the amount of information you have. It's based on something greater than that. Your brain is an infinitely powerful computer. It just doesn't need to rely on what's contained in your past experience. It has access to all experience, all knowledge. Instead of you trying to figure it out, instead of you trying to struggle, if you like, when you use your creative brain, you know that your role, your conscious role, is just to support what's actually happening to you and to move in the right direction. So if something comes along, you know instinctively what to do, and you don't have any fear about doing it. That's the thing, because in your creative brain. So if your creative brain, for example, says you're in the wrong relationship, you go, okay, I'm in the wrong relationship. I need to end it. I'm in the wrong job. I've got the wrong business. I used to employ a lot of salespeople, and I'd spend all my time working with the salespeople who were no good, who were in the wrong job, because it was fear-based. I should have been spending my time with the good salespeople, making them better. But I was always thinking, subconsciously, I can't fire that person. I can't get rid of them, because even though they're in the wrong job, I might not find someone to replace them, or I'll get them better. Things will improve. That's not the way it works, does it? Whereas if I listened to my intuition and I didn't have any fear about it, and I knew my brain would make sure everything worked out perfectly, I'd say, well, that's not working, needs to go.
It all comes down to fear, really, doesn't it? And
absolutely. Fear is the enemy. Fear is what activates the wrong part of your brain.
So do you have a practical approach in a way of just analyzing whether this is a perceived or real threat in any given moment?
I've developed a process called neurostate rebalancing, which is part of my coaching program, which is a process to get your brain to evaluate, to see the difference between real lions and imaginary lions. Because through our whole life experience, we've trained our brain to see that these things which aren't dangers, we've gotten to see that they are dangers, that they are threats. A nuclear war happening a war happening somewhere else, somehow our brain thinks that's a threat to our survival. So what I've created is a process to help your brain see the difference between what is a real and imaginary threat. Because you can stop putting all the fuel in, the bad fuel, in, which is the things that are making you feel bad, but you've also got to deal with what's already in there. What's your brain currently thinking about your life? But, the good thing about all this, once you clear all this out and once you recondition the engine, if you like, what starts to happen once you start to do this? once you start to say, I'm just really going to try and block out things that make me feel bad, and I'm going to trust my intuition and allow this part of my brain to do its job rather than me trying to control everything through my fear-based thinking parts of my brain, miracles start to show up in your life on a regular basis. And you go, wonder how that happened. Wow, that's interesting. Oh, I'm really glad that happened, or I'm glad that didn't happen. Oh, this is amazing. And then you start to trust more and more, and these things more and more show up because you understand and you see the results of what is actually happening. Because the real reason people don't make the right decisions is because they're afraid. I do a lot of marriage and relationship coaching, and the biggest problem people have is they stay stuck in a relationship because they're afraid. And when they're afraid, they do all the wrong things. They're stressed, they're not attractive, they're possibly with the wrong person, and it's all based on fear, and it keeps them stuck.
Yeah, I'm very curious to know, and as I'm sure the listeners are too, to know more about this, these tools for determining the difference between perceived and real threat and finding clarity on that. So where can people find you?
Well, everything's on my website, which is just my name, liamnaden.com. And yeah, tons of information there about all this stuff, about who we are, how our brain works.
So do you have a small challenge suggestion that could perhaps benefit listeners, something in any way associated to what we've been talking about?
Well, I think that a small challenge would be to say, what can I do to eliminate fear in my life? What's one little thing I could do? And you know, throughout the day, think about it. When you feel fear come up, so what could I do now to stop this? Is it turn off the television? Is it go away from the person I'm talking to? Or is it change the subject? Is it looking at what you're thinking in a different way? And just take it slow by slow, and slowly, and say, what's my challenge? I've got a fear coming up, which is my brain telling me that I should go into my survival state, and that's not an empowering state. That's not my natural state. It's not going to help me. So how can I get out of that? Whatever it is, how can I stop it from making me feel bad? Yeah. You have the choice. It is your choice. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I'm going to have a crack at that, and I'll definitely suggest it too. Again, it's about bringing awareness to these small things that make have potential to make a big difference in our lives. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much. It's been brilliant.